Now, here's the other side of the conversation. I don't think the Sixers want to hear it. I don't think the Sixers, from what I heard from Daryl Morey at his press conference, from his history of building teams, I still think in his heart of hearts, he believes the 3-star model is
no
the
doubt
way
in
to
my
go.
mind, yes.
And I think if all things are equal, let's just say, for the sake of argument, they have every option they want on the table. Paul George, you can get him on a max. Some of the role players that are out there, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, for example, he's not taking a top-of-market deal, and he's interested in coming to Philly on, let's say, a manageable deal, 3 years for 45, and you can get him and re-sign Batum and get some of these other guys. I think Daryl Morey will take the star route. I think he will go the 3rd-star path because I don't know that there's the belief collectively that 2 stars will work for them, even though the rest of the league seems to be pivoting toward we're going to go 2 stars, reload, recycle, go through role players and figure it out from there. And it's an interesting contrast to basically everybody else, including one of the teams that's in the finals.
On the Sixers side of things, when it comes to Embiid and Maxey, and I'm curious, of course, I won't have the answer because Embiid played great. He was banged up, and Maxey healthy, no Melton, which is a key part of your rotation, where it seems like seeing now where Boston and Dallas are, and the only injury that really affected both teams, well, Kristaps Porzingis on one side, the East seemed to be a little bit easier with their path, and then Maxi Kleber being down because of the shoulder injury somewhere in that 2nd round, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was the 2nd round when Maxi Kleber hurt his shoulder, and that point that I would be very curious to see where the Sixers may have ended up. Again, we've seen it in the past where they've gotten to the 2nd round, but if Embiid was healthy, it's always a question in the postseason. But when we talk about the 2 stars and many people saying they have it, and Maxey and Embiid, where would they have ended up should Embiid have been a little bit healthier going into the postseason than he was at that moment? Fighting through it, playing through it, doing what he did, helping extend that series. Yes, but we know he wasn't healthy. Not as an excuse, just more of a conversation piece of where we are right now with their stars being healthy. Where would our conversation be? Kelly Oubre and the questions of playing in the postseason, not really doing that again. DeAnthony Melton being healthy and giving them another body to actually go out there and play, not having to force Kyle Lowry to play 35-plus minutes because of a situation like that, and then having everybody else to simply fall into their roles from Batum and Hield and so on and so forth, maybe even Payne and whomever else overall. I of course, we all would have liked to have seen it just to find out because, again, it ended up in an early exit for the basketball team. So that's where I look at it, because would the conversation be different if those 2 All-Stars, MVP for Embiid, All-Star for Tyrese Maxey, did elevate their play and simply, as the guys bring up Tobias Harris's name, performed at a level enough to help win games of just simply hitting his averages in games that were close enough where all you needed was that production from him to get them to 1 point better in that game to win that one and potentially a series. So that's where I'd be a little bit curious. And as the guys talked about Boston and their 2 stars, let's just say the all-NBA players and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, that's why I mentioned it at the top. The other guys are not just guys. Their roster is deeper. They are former All-Stars, and even Derek White being an all-defensive team guy.
And he was in All-Star talks throughout the season.
That's where I was going next.
Yeah.
He was going to be an All-Star conversation this year, and that's how good he has been. But when you have conversations about stars in the league, everybody has their different definition of what a superstar, a star is, and what that might mean overall for what that player might be. So I'm fully aware, and that's why we talk about Dallas more in the sense of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving versus what Boston has. But when you talk about the 2 guys that you always bring up with Boston, it's Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. We talked about it yesterday when we spoke about Mikal and his importance to teams and how I compared his career, what it would look like with Drew Holiday, and the same type of thing of being that type of maybe star player where you still make an all-star team, not putting up enormous numbers, but you're effective on the defensive end and helping out in that way. And that's where it's just a conversation, again, that is interesting to have. And as Prophet One says, come on, Devon, be serious. I'm being serious in just the sense of what would the conversation be should they have been able to get past that first round matchup if they played Indiana in that second round, and what it would have looked like if you had a healthy team at that point, just like we're seeing right now as we go into the finals with these players. And look, Luka Doncic has been banged up. He's been beat up. He's been playing through things, and he's been still producing. 30 a game, you can book it every night. That guy's giving you 30 and close to a triple-double every single night. So when I say it, Prophet, I'm not saying as if we didn't know what the result was going to be, because we've seen this before. We've seen this story before, hypothetically speaking, because of what we're talking about in the 2 stars. If they were able to advance and do something with those 2 stars, would the conversation be a little bit different going into this offseason is what I'm asking.
I also think that because you're going to have the new national TV deals, you're going to have 10%, like clockwork, 10% increases in the salary cap. So future years, the damage of, let's say, a Paul George contract or a Tyrese Maxey contract, it's going to be easier to fit. We're really talking about stuff like using your mid-level exception. It's going to be easier to do that underneath the luxury tax and the aprons, because Maxey costs less and because there's going to be that increase in the salary cap. I also think, just looking at where the Sixers are, it would be tough to fill out real quality depth like a team like Dallas has over one summer. And because you're talking about Joel Embiid at 30, not Joel Embiid at 25, you can't really slow play this. And being able to hit on like 3 or 4 depth pieces who are going to be playable at this time next year in the playoffs is tough to do. It's a lot easier to take one swing on Paul George.
Especially if you don't sign someone like Paul George and you lose, if you trade for Butler and you lose a lot of that draft capital to bring those other guys in.
So I think it's just fundamentally easier to swing big once and connect than it is to hit 4 singles or 4 doubles in a row, especially when you're talking about a window the Sixers have with Joel Embiid, where this coming year is very crucially important. It's very, very important. I think a lot of people are not realistic on how daunting it would be to build out real quality depth. Not impossible. And both of these teams, quite frankly, in Boston and Dallas, have rebuilt their depth very quickly over the last year and a half. So it is possible, but it's very tough. And I just think all the situations are different. Part of what we said, it is easier to build a 2-star with role player model when you have one of the 2 or 3 best passers in the world. It's just easier to make those players more useful, to highlight their strengths, and to create shots for them. Joel Embiid is certainly a good passer for a center. I think he's evolved into becoming that, but he's not really a good passer for a number 1 option. He's certainly not an elite passer for a number 1 option. Tyrese Maxey, he's improved as a passer. He is only 23. I want to acknowledge that, Michael Belfatti. But you have to win with a 23-year-old Tyrese Maxey. We cannot expedite his birth certificate just because Joel Embiid is getting into his 30s.
There's
now.
a Brett Brown classic right there. So expedite his birth certificate.
He is a below-average passer for a point guard, certainly for a lead primary initiator. And because of that, you have to just sort of react to that. This is the team you have. These are the stars you have. What's the best way to go about it? And I do, even acknowledging the new limitations of the new collective bargaining agreement, I think the best way forward is still with a 3-star approach, and then hope because you get Jimmy Butler or because you get Paul George, other players, whether that's on a mid-level, whether that's on a minimum, whether it's on a buyout market, will want to come to you because they know you have a chance to win.
We all silly like the mayor.